Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I thought it might be interesting to discuss how I got interested in disturbing films and then kind of got put off of them. So first off, I want to explain how I developed an interest in them in the first place. So as you are well aware of, considering this channel, I am a fan of horror films. And I've watched a pretty decent amount of horror films by this point, I think it's fair to say. And whenever one is kind of exploring a medium, you kind of find yourself going deeper and deeper. And for horror films, this can get to some pretty extreme stuff, can be part of what's called extreme cinema. So for instance, I was watching these new French extremity films, and as you can imagine, a lot of them are very extreme. A lot of them are developed specifically to be transgressive, to upset people. And even though I didn't necessarily enjoy all of these, a lot of these I really did enjoy and I really liked, and I wanted to see more things like them. And then it wasn't long after seeing some of those new French extremity films that I managed to finally watch, because I wanted to watch it for a long time, Cannibal Holocaust. And Cannibal Holocaust, again, is a very controversial movie. I think it even says here the most controversial film ever made. I don't believe that to be true. It's certainly one of the most controversial films of all time. I'll certainly give it that much. And while not necessarily everything in it is good, there's a certain aspect of this film that has a lot of problems with it. In general, it is a very well constructed film. It's fascinating as a kind of precursor to found footage, and I just found like the structure of the film, the story it wanted to tell, the themes it explored to be really fascinating, even with all the gruesome, upsetting content that is present in it. So as you can imagine, I wanted to see more, and I guess YouTube was noticing my interests, because they recommended that I take a look at a video that explained the disturbing movie Iceberg. Now, there's a couple of things to explain when it comes to this iceberg, and I don't want to go into too much depth because it isn't so much about the iceberg but more my response to it. But basically, the iceberg is a meme format which is based on the idea that the little bit of the iceberg that you can see above the water is only a little part of it, that the vast majority of the iceberg is hidden under the water. And the way it works is that the stuff at the top are like the most commonly known stuff, regardless what topic it is, and then as you go further and further down, it steadily becomes more and more unknown. With regards to the disturbing movie Iceberg itself, it is split up into 8 tiers, and it's been broken down very well by a bunch of people. I'll talk about them in a little bit, but to give kind of my own experience with the films in this iceberg, I've seen everything on tier 1. I've seen all of them. Tier 2, I've seen almost all of them. The only 2 that I haven't seen on tier 2 are The Human Centipede, which, to be completely honest, I'm not particularly interested in, and Tusk, which I just haven't been able to get my hands on. Tier 3, I've only seen 2 films so far from it, Martyrs and Cannibal Holocaust, which are both over there. And then with regards to tier 4 and onwards, I hadn't heard of any of these movies except for 2 franchises in tier 4, those being August Underground and Guinea Pig. And as you can imagine, when I first learned of the existence of this iceberg, I was thinking to myself, ooh, I was super excited. I was like, oh, all of these disturbing movies that I can potentially watch, there's so many, blah, 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 And as I began to research the actual movies within this iceberg, I steadily became less and less enthusiastic about looking at these disturbing films, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So before I go on any further, I just want to say that the way I learned about a lot of these movies beyond, Googling Wikipedia pages or articles about them, was through experiencing them through other people's experiences, in particular 4 YouTube channels, and I'll give them a shout out. I'm gonna link them in the description below. That is Wendigoon, Unboxed, Watched and Reviewed, that's all one channel name, Joe Darko, and Faye D'Angelo. I'm going to include those links to their channels in the description, and I have to be very thankful to them for allowing a kind of safer way for me to experience these movies without having to go out and seek them and then end up actually watching them. I could see what they thought about them, what the actual story was like, a few kind of safer clips that can go on YouTube, etc, etc. But I also have to emphasize that even within this safer kind of experience of experiencing these movies, there's still a lot of very disturbing and upsetting content. So if you're at all squeamish and you don't like the idea of extreme cinema, I wouldn't even recommend you to watch any of these videos. I just ignore it, just focus on my video, which is a little bit safer because I don't go into detail or anything. But yeah, I just wanted to give them some attention. Anyway, back to my own thoughts on these disturbing movies. So based on, what I learned from these YouTube channels, based on what I learned about, looking at them on Wikipedia, looking at all these other articles, etc., etc., there were a few movies that caught my attention that I was thinking to myself, yeah, I might enjoy them. I have since picked up Solo, and I've picked up The House That Jack Built. I haven't actually watched either one yet. I've been working on another bunch of horror films. But there are a couple of movies that I do want to emphasize in this disturbing movie, Iceberg, that I am actually interested in. However, most of them I am not. And I'm going to explain why. When I was thinking of disturbing movies, I was kind of envisioning stuff like Martyrs, stuff like Dalma Post, stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, where there is some really disturbing, gruesome content, but there is a story behind it. There is a message to be told. And I find that kind of combination to be very appealing. Whereas, as many people have said, as you go further and further down the disturbing movie Iceberg, it steadily becomes less and less about story, characters and themes, and more about shock value. And I'm going to be completely honest and say that shock value I'm not particularly interested in for the sake of it. If shock value is attached to good storytelling, great characters, good themes, etc., etc., then I am super interested. But unfortunately, a lot of these other movies, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, don't seem to tick that box. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to that. One area in this disturbing movie Iceberg that I am kind of interested in are the movies on Tier 6, which are these shockumentary movies, which I think could be potentially quite interesting. But in general, I'm just not super interested in a lot of these other movies. Now, I'm tempted to give some examples, but that might be a bit too much for some people. So I'm just going to say a couple of names that I learned about that, I wasn't particularly enthused about, etc., etc., that kind of ended up putting me off. So for instance, there's stuff like My Chan's Daily Life. The idea of it sounds quite interesting, but learning about the story it actually tells, I just don't find it interesting at all. I find it completely off-putting, to be completely honest. Then of course, from Tier 7 onwards, I generally think that everything on Tier 7 and Tier 8 is completely morally objectionable, that I have absolutely no interest in watching it because it contains lots of real footage. There is no story. It is more about shock, whether it comes to, sexual stuff, whether it comes to violent stuff, or, etc., etc. And that just isn't what I'm interested in. So ultimately, looking at this disturbing movie Iceberg, learning about all of these films present on it, has been a really eye-opening experience. It has really made me realize what it was that I was seeking from these disturbing movies. And to be completely honest, I'm very glad about that. And also it has given me a couple of more movies to watch, for instance Solo and The House That Jack Built. But I think it's fair to say that I'll be pretty content in never watching many of these movies. Of course, having said all of that, I would absolutely love to hear what you guys think about all of this. I mean, what do you think of the disturbing movie Iceberg? Which movies have you seen from the disturbing movie Iceberg, and what did you think of them? How disturbing were they? Have you seen anything from Tier 4 and onwards? And if you have, again, what did you think of them, and did you find them disturbing? What are your thoughts on these kind of disturbing movies in general? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? And for what reasons? And of course, if you have any additional information about disturbing movies in general, about the disturbing movie Iceberg, about any of the movies on this disturbing movie Iceberg, etc., etc., please leave it in the comments below. And of course, if you want to support the channel, I would encourage you to use my Amazon affiliate links in the description below. When you purchase horror through those affiliate links, not only supporting me, not only supporting the channel, but you're also supporting the horror industry. So I'd highly encourage you to use those affiliate links to purchase your horror. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.